Hello, my name is Alan Wright, and I'm here today to deliver the episode 7 of my podcast series. This will be the final one, and it's a very special podcast, video podcast. I took my glasses off because the glare is pretty bad in here. I'm not a professional in terms of lighting and cameras and podcasts, but I designed my podcast basically for just normal folk. I'm not trying to use artificial intelligence or all the fancy things that in the modern craze of podcasts people do. Won't be on a lot of pretty graphics, just me talking to you. And I think it's important enough for you to hear what I have to say and do whatever it is you want to do about it. But I think it's maybe the most urgent thing you've ever heard in your life. That's a big, bold statement, I know. But I'm making it. Now, excuse me, I'm Tucson, Arizona, and I have allergies, and I'm old. So, as I start this podcast, if you haven't seen my other episodes, or even if you have, I write and speak about something called Cyborgenesis, not cyber, and there's a difference. Why am I talking about Cyborgenesis, and why is that important? Well, first let me say that I'm speaking to you again from Tucson, Arizona, the Right Success Institute, WSI, where I'm the founder, the director, and professor of metaphysics. Now, I'm not associated with Harvard or Yale or Columbia or California Institute of Technology or Stanford or any of the famous universities abroad. And there's a reason for that. Now, you can make up your own mind about this, but I've had a lot of choices in my life. And I don't agree with where they go with things, why they do it the way they do it, for what I want to do. I could have. Now, I can say that boldly, and you can say, well, yeah, that would be, who knows. Well, you're going to say that about a lot of things in this podcast. But this podcast is where my life has led me. And it's been 50 years of research and development. And it's hearing about things that'll sound odd to you because of the way you've been programmed. You don't like that word programmed. You think you have freedom of speech, you can think any way you want, you can do whatever you want. That's the way you've been programmed to believe. Of course, there's a reason for that. It's called civilizing people. You aren't always a people, you know, and historically, in your ancestry. Okay? And that's where I want to take this, kind of to start. In my other podcasts, the first 6, and then a 7th welcoming to my website, I talk a lot about true lies. I talk a lot about pragmatism, being practical, being a normal person, a worker, a working class person, which I have been all my life. Okay? And I won't go into all the over 50 different jobs I've had, everything from working underground in a mine to casinos and the academic world. And I've done so academically at the national level, as well as the local level, and in several states. And I was president of my professional association for the state federal directors of correctional education. I was ambassador, and I was on the accrediting institution for 19 states and colleges and universities. So I have a background, but I have stayed on the periphery because all of the things they're doing out there are regulated, and they're very, very, they follow a course that I didn't want to go. And why didn't I want to go that way? I wasn't interested in becoming a doctor, an engineer, a lawyer, or any of these things. I wanted to study all those things, which I did, But I didn't want to be a specialist. I always wanted to know how things worked in our world. Well, I know. And I want to share a little about of that with you, because you've really not been told the truth. You've been presented since the day you were born with useful information. They gave you a name. They named themselves Daddy, Dada, Mama, and all this, and went all the way up to what you think you know today. More and more names and numbers. Names and numbers are just symbols. They're not the things themselves. And now that's a very important thing. It's not just an academic issue. Because we think of them, of things, as things. Well, there are things and there are maybe not things. And what does that even mean? Well, you were taught about space and a vacuum a little bit. You have the symbol for zero, nothing. Everything, 1, 0, nothing. Now, those two things don't exist. But I'll tell you how they do exist. Because you don't know mathematics very well. You probably haven't studied calculus, the people listening to this podcast. Well, I go back to 1670, roughly, when Newton and Leibniz both simultaneously developed two different viewpoints of the calculus. One very English and one very German. But nevertheless, we use both in today's world to take us to space and to do all the things we do in science. And so mathematics is a part of your world, and you can't really see it. You can see numbers we write down on paper, and you can hear the words. But what is a number? And all these kinds of things. Well, my studies go back mostly about 5,000 years from a metaphysical point of view. Classical physics don't like metaphysics so much because we talk philosophically, we talk religiously, we talk in terms of physics, quantum physics, calculus, trigonometry, geometry, all these things. It's a generalist point of view. It's to try to see how it all fits together. Now you say, well, what? That's boring. Why does that matter to you? Well, if you've seen the cover to the podcast on any of my episodes, it basically starts this way. You are in danger. Now that sounds pretty dramatic, and you probably won't initially believe it, but if you pay attention to me, you will. Or at least you'll have the opportunity. And if you can spare a few minutes of your time, I suggest you do so. Because I know you don't know what's going on. You may think you do, and you know a lot of things aren't right in our world today with all the wars and the violence and the chaos and the international difficulties. And even America is bankrupt, and surely you know that. You can't recover almost $40 trillion debt by making more debt. It can't happen. And you say, well, they'll figure something out. Well, no, they're not gonna. But what they're gonna do is further the socioeconomic system they designed. And I'm talking about the powerful, the wealthy and the powerful, and hiring the smarter, but not the more wealthy. And they'll design something, but it ain't going to be good for you. You can be sure of that. And I talk a lot about that in my other 6 episodes, so I'm not going to really go into that here. What I'm going to do is give you, I like to call it a metaphor. I like to use mixed metaphors. Okay, I like that. Ever since I wrote my first book in 2006, I talk about metaphors and mixed metaphors. And I'm going to do this in a way I think you can understand it if you'll pay attention. I'm just asking you to do that, if you will. Give me some attention for a little while. Okay, I'm not making any money off this. I don't charge anybody. I don't have students. I don't have clients. I don't have anything but guests, and I welcome you into my home office, the Right Success Institute. It didn't start out in a home office. I had 13 schools at one point. I worked for the California state to get them out of federal lawsuits, the state of Arizona to get them out of lawsuits, the Colorado's vocational director. I've had a lot of experience. So let me talk to you from my heart, person to person right now, instead of behind a lectern like right over here. I've been behind a lectern for many, many years. I gave speeches in high school and gave sermons at the Presbyterian church in my hometown. But here I am now talking to you, and I'm going to use a metaphor. So I'm going to mix it, so please follow for just a few minutes, and I think you're going to see the picture. Okay? I'm going to talk simple, not a lot of mathematics, okay? This is not a classical physics kind of conversation. This is more about Einstein's relativity taken to the next level. What do I mean by relativity? Well, everything you know builds a worldview that you hold in your head. Now, it's very similar to many others because we're taught similarly. That's the way the system works. To keep people civil, they want you to kind of thinking the same so that you don't get too much chaos and strife. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, your worldview is what's going on in your brain. Now, you're taught a lot of different things about your brain, or nothing, because you don't probably want to get into brain science, okay, neurology. Well, I've studied that, okay. Neurology talks about consciousness and unconsciousness and how the brain works, but they do it from a level of doctor, medicine, that sort of thing, or you get psychologists and psychiatrists. And I've studied from one of the best psychiatrists ever, and I learned to do reality therapy from him and from one of his prime students, Ed Ford. And I don't consider myself a reality therapist because I never really wanted to do therapy. I want to do education. I'm a teacher. I call myself a teacher, preacher, creature. Always have. But what does that mean? I want to talk to you right now about, you know that water is important to life. You know that you're a biological being. You know that evolution says the creatures came out of the ocean, crawled up on the land, and became what we know today, eventually, okay, including us. We know that religious people differ on that. We know that you go back and listen to what they were saying 5,000 years ago through their ancient writings that have been, many of which have been found and deciphered. But we know they talked about gods. We know a little about the Roman gods and the Greek gods and all that. But you don't know much about it before that time. Everybody's talked about gods and God and how we got created and all that. But all of it is wrong. It's what scientists call different paradigms. It's different systems of thought that develop over time as we learn more about our world. Now, what I'm going to tell you is even more shocking. Okay, now I'm going to tell you something real shocking first, and then maybe you can kind of assimilate it as we go along. As you go up through this programming, through public schools and maybe on to college and then your trade or whatever you do, it's a form of programming. You're taught to do certain things a certain way, and that's what you carry with you throughout your life, and you carry with you certain ideas that you're taught. Okay, that's a form of programming your brain. Okay? It's very difficult to escape that programming. But some people are able to do that better than others. And I'm one of those people. Now, some people, and not in the literature you're familiar with, call that being an avatar. The reason being is there's something else going on in your head that's created in your head as you recycle what you've been programmed to know and putting in a different perspective, a different worldview. That's what I have here, and that's what I'm going to share with you. But in my websites, I have 17 now, I present all this in a different way, very simply, for people that aren't used to this kind of talk. But from this worldview, speaking as an avatar, okay, what goes on in the human brain is different by degree to all the other brains and all the other animal species. For one big thing, it took a leap at some point, and the leap involved language, just like the things that are going on with artificial intelligence. As it's a misnomer, but artificial intelligence is just large language models studying everything that's ever been written or recorded about language, what people say and do, every right or wrong and all that. It's very confusing. Nevertheless, what goes on in my brain's a little different than yours, okay? And the reason being is I wanted to know the origin of things, but not from the stories people have told, but from taking all of that and reprogramming it, re-questioning it, and making it logical and rational and make sense. And I've done that, along with lots of other people trying to, and a lot of people call it the theory of everything, the grand theory of everything. One famous writer wrote, "My Big Toe," T-O-E, theory of everything. Well, that makes you, to basic people, normal people, you think you're a know-it-all. Well, I'm going to tell you what I know right now in very simple terms, and you decide what I know and don't know. I'm going to start with my fish pond outside. Okay? When I go out, and I got a big fish pond, it's about 1,500 gallons, and it's pretty good size, and I got some pretty big fish. I have koi and a couple of goldfish, and they're getting pretty big now. I've had them for like 12, 15 years, something like that. And if a fish comes out of the water, they die. Okay? Well, because they don't know anything about air. They don't even know that it exists. You can't see it. Okay? They see water. Okay? And they get some kind of light, you know. But mostly they know when I'm going out, because the water carries sound and all that. They know when I'm going out to feed them. Okay? But they don't know air. Well, we live in air. When we crawled out of the ocean, if that ever happened, let's just assume it did for a minute, we live in air. You can't really see it. You can see certain particles in it being carried around, dust and things like that. Okay, and we've been taught that it's in chemistry, if you took it in high school or college, we know that it's made up of atoms, hydrogen and oxygen and nitrogen and a few other things these days. Okay, we know that. But what is that? Nobody's ever actually seen an atom. We can draw pictures of it, what we think it looks like, and we're pretty sure we've been wrong about making it a little solar system with electrons going around and all that. But the model works pretty well. But it's not accurate. It's what I call a true lie. It's a paradigm, and paradigms shift over the years. It's a picture of things, and the picture is incorrect. Now, if a fish can't see water or air, and if they come out into it, they die, let's take it up a level. About humans, you can't see air, really. But what happens when we take away the air? What's left? Well, you were taught probably there's a vacuum. Okay? And, well, no. The fact of it is there's no vacuum. There's no nothing. Zero is a limit. It's nothing. Nothing doesn't exist. Everything doesn't exist. Everything's changing all the time, coming and going. Okay? Humans, you lose the air. There's something else there, but you don't know about it. And this is where quantum physics come into play. It's just things get smaller and smaller. We now know. We didn't know this when I was in school. They were just learning it back in the 1900s. But they were learning, the subatomic physicists were learning there was more to it. They've now discovered quite a lot subatomically in quantum physics. Now they're even using it in computing. But what is it? Well, a man named Paul Dirac, doing his mathematics and everything, a very famous physicist, he developed what they call the Sea of Dirac. Well, think of it as coming out of the water and the air. Think about the air as our ocean, our water. Okay? But you can come out of that too. Now, that's hard to imagine, right? You can come out of the air and still live. but not as humans. Just like fish can't come out of the water and live as humans, humans can't come out of the air. There's something else. What is it? Well, it's getting closer to reality at the very basic level. Okay? There's stuff out there. Now, a long time ago they called it the ether. But then scientists said, nah, there's no ether. And they would run some experiments. The problem is not so much with the experiments or the physicists, but their interpretation of the results. I've worked in laboratories, I've done a lot of stuff, and I've seen interpretations incorrect in every field all over the place. Okay? The wrong interpretation is there is no vacuum. Right down as to what's called the Planck scale, P-L-A-N-C-K, Planck, very famous physicist, quantum physicist. And they learned that, like we think with our telescopes and our astronomy, we look way out into the cosmos and we say there's an end of the universe and there was a big explosion and the Big Bang caused everything else. Okay? Incorrect. Wrong paradigm. Okay? That's being proven. Okay? There is what's called light energy and dark energy. They know that. And dark energy is huge out there, but nobody knows what it is. I can tell you. It is gravity itself producing matter. But it's below, in the sea, below our understanding, below air, below something else out there that we've always thought of space out there, and we thought of a long distance and planets and stars and solar systems and all the galaxies. They didn't know about that 5,000 years ago. They were learning a little bit about it, it's been shown. Well, the truth of it is, the world that we live in, okay, now this will be a shock to your worldview, and that is the world that we live in isn't what you think it is. It's a process. And all that exists fundamentally, okay, is basically a process of coming and going. But it's very, very tiny. It's, if you take a human body and you made it smaller a little at a time, and each time it's in a multiple of 10, we call that, you know, going microscopically down in really tiny, much about the same. You would be multiplying this length by 10, 34 times. But only smaller, just like we go bigger to get roughly the size people call the universe. Now, a metaphysicist knows there's no universe. There's no God. But there are godlike stuff, and there's a huge place, if you want to call it that, that we live in. But it's really just a system of coming and going. Everything's changing all the time. Okay, now what is it that's changing? Well, in roughly late 1600s, a man named Leibniz, Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz, discovered what he called the monad. Well, a monad is kind of a false name for it too, because he was a believer in God, but he was also a great mathematician, and what he called a monad, today ontological mathematicians like myself would call it a world system of monads. Now, some physicists in between quantum and classical and try to reconcile relativity and all the rest of it, you can think of this as light energy and dark energy. But it's only, we are taught that energy can neither be created nor destroyed. Well, the fact of it is, it's created and destroyed every day, but it's not really being destroyed or created, it's just changing. You've got light and dark. Think of it as photonic, the source of all light, and you can think of it as dark, the creator of all mass. The density that comes from the world. It's dark, and then the light creates suns. The dark creates planets. Okay? And eventually they get to a certain size and they pop. Okay? And they recycle. Okay? But there's no ending to it either way. Light and dark goes back and forth, and what they go back and forth through is time. And that's why it's called a vibration by many. And the top part of a wave you can think of as the light phase. And then it passes down through a 0 point, and you get the dark phase, where matter's created. And one of the biggest questions in physics today is, what is gravity? No one can really tell you. We know it's related to mass, okay? But how did you get mass in the first place? And how does all that come about? Well, I know. Ontological mathematics tells us, okay? And what happens is there's these tiny, what they call floating 0 points out there, everywhere. They're everywhere, even though there is no such thing as everywhere, because it's infinite. It's eternal and infinite. It's constantly everywhere that you can imagine are these little processes going back and forth, okay? The vibrations. A very famous physicist by the name of I never can remember his name, Rupert Sheldrake, came up with what he calls morphic resonance. Well, that's what he's talking about, the music of the spheres. It's these vibrations that make these waves, and they're very, very tiny. You can't measure them. We'll never have instrumentation small enough to measure them. You got to use it, know it in your brain. Okay? These waves you're never going to see. Classical physics talk about wave particles. Well, what's a wave? You can think of a wave in the ocean. Well, the waves in the ocean I'm talking about are very, very tiny, and you can't see that. Just like a fish can't see air, humans can't see the ether, the Sea of Dirac, where all these little waves are. Okay, all it is the going back and forth through time, coming and going. Now, here's the way you can think about that with my mixed metaphors. When you breathe in your air, you suck it in and you blow it out. Now, I'm being a little dramatic, but you suck in air, you blow it out. Okay, well, that's what's happening in the Sea of Dirac. Okay, these little monads are sucking it in, and that's what I could call a graviton. It's a gravitonic phase. It sucks in. It creates density. It builds mass. It's dark energy. Well, when that energy has light, it's just passing through another phase, and it is blowing out. Gravitonic phase is sucking in. Photonic phase is blowing out. Light shining out. Dark sucks it in. Okay? Night and day. Your lungs. I mean, you can see how things kind of come from all of this if you look far enough and close enough. Distance and time are the same thing. Now, I've proven this. I'm the only person that's proven this that I know about. How can I say that? Well, you can't get distance without going through time. And if you have time, you have to have distance. But just a little bit. That's why these little monads are very, very tiny. And it's the origin of motion. Back and forth, but very tiny waves. It's too small to see it as a particulate action because particles don't exist yet. It's in between. It's called hollow fractal. Now this brings a lot of the current science to talk about, well, wait a minute, now that sounds a lot like being simulated. It's like what we call virtual. It's like gaming theory and all that, okay? But this is a different game, okay? It's a lot different. Hollow fractal just is another way of saying eternity and eternal. Eternal is a time thought. Infinite is about distance. There's no end or beginning to the world. There's no world, really. It's just a word we use. It's just a happening. It's infinite and it's eternal, constantly. Well, all these little monads, we'll use that term, even though it's not just one, it's everywhere. These little waves, they're just constantly going back and forth. But when they wiggle like that, think Brownian motion in chemistry and different sciences. But Einstein also discovered that. Well, when they wiggle back and forth, that's the origin of motion. So you account for motion, you account for gravity, you account for light, energy, and it never goes away. It's constantly created and destroyed. You have construction, destruction. We know that that exists. Coming and going, living and dying, being born, passing through. Well, that's good news for you if you think about it, because part of you is going to pass through. You're going through a phase of life and death. Well, but what remains at death? Well, there's all these ideas through all religions and philosophy and all the rest, and I've studied those, okay? And it's a yin and yang of sorts, coming and going, in and out, over and under. It's symmetrical, but what's happening is it just changes form. Now, famous philosophers talked about form and function. We know form and function exist. Okay, we have a life form, and then we can function. Okay, think of it that way. Well, these monads have that too, but what happens is, since they're so closely packed together, they're everywhere, what happens is they bump into each other. And this is how a lot of other things originate, because as they're bumping, they're turning slightly, very slightly, because there's not really anything there but for an instant. Some physicists call this instantiation. It's just an instant. That's the origin of time. If those are doing the same thing, they push away, and that's why light shines. Okay? Now it may shine a very short distance, but as it builds up, it shines and becomes suns, solar systems. Now folks, that's a lot to take in, I know, and there's no way you're going to believe all this. But I'm telling you it's true. It's my legacy. It's my message to you. Now I'm starting with my closest friends, and I'm starting to spread this, and almost nobody's paying any attention to me, and I understand that. It's a lot to grasp, but it's true. Now I will get this out the best I can, as far as I can, to help people. And this idea that Rupert Sheldrake has, I don't agree with everything he says about it, but nevertheless he's brilliant in realizing that a lot of this New Age stuff about vibrations is real. Vibrations can affect you, okay? Now, maybe not in the way everybody thinks about it, but it matters, okay? And it can matter literally, okay? And it can also be part of a going away. But probably when the matter breaks down, when it stops functioning, probably when you die, there's some stuff that still, all the little tiny pieces all around this sea of Dirac, all around us and within us, doesn't go away. It's going to keep doing its thing. So in some sense that we don't really know much about yet, it's very likely you don't go away. Now you could say it's a heaven of sorts. I don't know. You could say maybe it's a hell, because it could be chaotic, it could be orderly. Mass is orderly, photonic is not so orderly. Light spreads and shines and creates heat and all the rest of it. The gravitonic collapses and forms mass and mountains and rocks and sand. Well, in between is where we live, and we're going to stay that way. Now what it's going to look like or be like, fish don't know how we live. You know, critters don't know, but we know that butterflies come from caterpillars. Okay, the body goes away and a new thing comes out. We know about it, chickens and eggs. We know about humans and women and vaginas. Okay, well, what to say there's not something much smaller in this sea of Dirac that lives on? And maybe it's our sense of who we are. I don't know. I'm not pretending to know that. But I know something lives on. And that ought to be good news to you. Now, the scientists of today are going the wrong direction. This is why I don't want to be in the universities, because they're guided by funding. Everything in our world is funded. Okay? And those universities would lose their funding if they started talking in science about a God or a simulation, because a simulation, and that's real popular today with quantum physicists, but a simulation is just leading to who's the simulator? A God. Throughout all of human history, it's been talk of gods. There is no God, there is no creator, there is no creation. It's a constant creative, destructive process. Eternal, everlasting, infinite. No beginning, no ending. No 0 and 1. Now I talk about biodigitation. And the reason of my holy trinity of gravitonic phase, photonic, and chronotonic is that that counts for everything. Mass, light, and time. Distance. Okay? Well, motion. Well, this phase that goes on forever, okay, it doesn't require a creator. I forgot what I was going to say there. I got lost in my thinking. There just can't be a simulation. We don't live in a but I call it biodigitation because it did create, we're a biological system, and it's not necessarily, when you think about eternity and all time, there's plenty of time for it to be developed somewhere else, not just right here. On the other hand, this may be the only place where we have biological forms of all this. And that takes me to the final phase of what I want to say today. I want to talk to you about where that danger comes from I was talking about. It's silly to think that we are the end process, that we are the end of it all. We're the godlike creatures and the best that can be made. And humans are fallible. We can look around, we kill each other, we war eternal throughout forever. We eat each other, we do the bad things. Okay, good and bad. Okay? We have power systems. We have international controversies. Okay? Now I know we have the love and caring, and some people would say lust and maybe some caring at a different level, and all these things. But nevertheless, what I want you to know is this whole thing right in the news right now, a whole lot. Everybody's talking about artificial intelligence. Okay? It's not artificial at all. And it's not intelligent. It's a large language model built from digits, zeros and ones, but done in a different format than our brains do. Okay? It's doing it in a format that these computers, as we like to call them, make it and what it's able to do. That's where the intelligent part comes from. And it comes from the fact people like to think we're intelligent. Well, the issue is that this is where the cyber, not cyborg, comes in. Cybergenics, computer ciphers and all that, they're symbols. And they're approximations. Everything we know, everything we've ever said, everything we do is based on these symbols. We call things different things, and we build a worldview based on our language, but it's just an approximation. It's a visualization. It's hollow fractal. And the reason we make mistakes and have paradigms in science and different philosophies and languages, it's all just part of the structure. It comes and it goes. Languages come and go. Physics comes and goes. Okay? My grandparents rode horseback on their honeymoon. Okay? Went out and laid around a campfire. Okay. Today we don't do that. Coming and going. Well, the next thing that's coming is Cyborgenesis, another genesis. If you're religious, you think about the genesis of humans, you know, the Garden of Eden and that sort of thing. Well, there's beginnings and endings. It depends on how you look at it. Okay? Well, so there's a new epical beginning coming right now. It's literally happening as we speak. Now, it will take a lot of years. But there's a very violent revolutionary piece of that evolution that's going to take place right now. And it all involves socioeconomics and power structures. Now, I don't have time to go into all that, but if you want to look at my other podcasts and my websites, I do. Okay? I've worked in government. I've worked in corporations. I've consulted at all levels. I've talked to the former general in charge of all of DARPA, the research for the military. Okay? He also was the head of, and part of his career, of Fort Huachuca here in Arizona, the communications center. He worked for the Joint Chiefs of Staff. He was the primary officer for command control and communications. I learned a lot about things from him, and Dee Hawk, who was the founder and CEO emeritus of Visa. I've talked to a lot of people, and I know a lot. You should give me a little bit of your attention if you can. But what I'm trying to tell you is this cyborgenesis is taking place right now, as we speak. And what it means in layman's term is we are going to go through another division to where it really is the end of humanity as we know it. Not the end of all humans, because there's going to be some humans, mostly the wealthy, mostly the better educated, the better situated in this world. Those people right now are creating a bifurcation of them and everybody else. And they're using this AI to do it, and that's where the idea of cyber currency, cryptocurrency is coming from. That's the final means of control of what's always been the working class by the people that claim to own everything. Now you may think you own your house, or you may think you own your car or your clothes. You don't really, you rent them. Whether you know it or not, or think of it that way or not. Well, these people control stuff. Okay? Whether you use the word ownership or not, or what their net worth is, they control stuff, including your life. Okay? Well, they're going to a cyborgenic phase. They're going to move into this new world, and their heirs are. Yours are probably not. Now, you may see in the movies, they do this on purpose, about zombies, Walking Dead. Okay? Well, those trillions of dollars I spoke about earlier, they're not just going away. They take them from you. Okay? They take it, do what they want with it, and they have all this neat, fancy little ways that the banking system since 1913 and the Federal Reserve Act, they pull all this money out of you with your taxes and blah, 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 and they move it around to this wealthy group. Believe it or not. And yeah, some of you out here have a little more money than others, but $1 million's not that much anymore compared to trillions and billions. Okay? The world you were born into, where $1 or a penny or a nickel could buy you stuff, that's over. And it's hard to put in your head. And a lot of you are old like me. It's hard to understand. You don't want to believe it. But the new world, you're not going to own stuff. They're going to give you money, cyber currency, as they see fit, based on your use value to them. Henry Kissinger, former Secretary of State, very brilliant man, who I blame for me being in Vietnam, actually. He lied. He admitted lying about it. So did his Secretary of Defense. But anyway, I grew up a lot there. But what I know I do this. I'm all over the place. But the important thing about the socioeconomic system is you think everybody thinks like you, but you don't realize these people at the very top don't care a whit about you. If you're not giving them taxes or money in some form, profits, investments, whatever, they don't care about you. And you can't imagine that, because you try to think, oh, I care about all those poor people and the homeless, and you care about this people, and then you know you care more about your family and your spouse more than everybody else. We know that. Well, frankly, there's people that you don't really know their names even. They don't give a whit about you. You're going to be pushed into a zombie state, okay? Not everybody at the same time, same way, but there's going to be, most people are going to be cast aside. And the next generation of humans are going to develop what we call transhuman cyborgenesis. And they're going to be more of a different kind of a mixture of these monads. They're going to be a different mixture of matter and energy, and it'll be partially biological and partially something else that you don't understand, and you probably never will. But it's happening. Now, the reason I do this website and the reason I share this with my friends, hoping some of them pay attention, is that you have a choice right now with this danger I talk about. You can become more useful to them. That's your survival pathway. Or not. Maintain things the way you are. Maintain things the way they kind of be. And if you feel old and useless now, you ain't seen nothing yet. Younger people, you better start moving towards becoming joined in some way with people that make them think you're useful to them. Because it's these wealthy people that are going to control what we call artificial intelligence. Yes, we may reach the point of generalized AI, and we may reach the point of where there's a singularity, and it's more powerful than humans are. It's already can think roughly the way computers do, millions and maybe even trillions of times faster than everybody combined can think humans. Now, what does that mean? You'd have no clue. You have no clue, and most of the people that are building it don't either. But they control all of it, the technology. Our whole technological revolution through the whole industrial era has come to this. But the people that control that and partner with each other leave you out, and increasingly more and more. Now, they'll give you little bits of it with the smartphones and all the computerized stuff, and everything's being that way. And they'll feed you that to help fund them to do it to the point where they're going to control the world more efficiently and completely. And you'll be like the Neanderthals. Now, do you think that a Neanderthal ever met a Homo sapien? They never knew Homo sapiens. They just thought, well, they're smarter people than us. They're different. They make funny squeals and stuff to the degree they thought, like we do. But it took a long time before they went away totally and Homo sapiens came into being totally. Now, I have a couple of genes in me that are Neanderthal. That doesn't come as a surprise to a lot of you. But you do too. It never goes completely away. And that's a long story of genetics, and you don't want to hear that. But the fact of it is, if you think of you right now as a Neanderthal, you don't think there's going to be an end to humanity. We're going to just keep growing, getting better and smarter and nicer and all the rest. No, it isn't going to happen that way. But it won't all happen instantaneously either. And it's not going to be good news for people that don't do what I call becoming an avatar. You've got to reprogram your brain or you're going to get left out. You can't just poo-poo the whole idea of transhumanism. There's a choice right now, and it's not something you can ignore or you're going to perish. Now, when I say perish, I just mean that death change. Okay? But what is going to happen is a new form of life is emerging, transhuman or post-human. You can be we can go be part of the post-humanity, gone away, or you can be part of the transhuman, going the other way, to developing what's new. Which is better? It's your choice. You can't ignore it. Ignorance is not a choice, because I'm giving it to you. You can ignore me, but you're making a choice. You're going to go the wrong way. You've got to choose Cyborgenesis, living in what I call Cyborgenica, not America, Cyborgenica, where this Cyborgenesis is emerging, a new system of socioeconomics, as you might imagine, is forming as we speak, right now, all around you. Controlled by a few, with a lot left out. Now, if you're religious, you might be saying, oh, that sounds a lot like the Second Coming, or Armageddon. Well, it's a little like that for a lot of people. And it's also a new existence for those that are powerful. Now, power is intrinsic to what we call energy and gravity and light energy and dark energy. Everything about probability and possibility works to create power sources, like electricity, like light. Okay? The power of gravity to pull you down and hold you down and all the rest that holds things together. It's power. Well, socioeconomic power works the same way. It works differently for different people and different creatures and different things. It can be controlled. But right now, the controllers, you don't even admit, almost none of you will admit that you have been programmed. You don't admit that. It's hard to accept. You can break out of that program. You don't have to get weird and tattoo your body to do it. You need to use up this and get aware of what's going on and try to find a way forward where you're into this cyborgenesis, where you're a cyborg in essence, some kind of combination of biological and this new, faster, more powerful being, or you're going to get left behind. Well, that's my message. And I truly believe you're in danger because you're not doing that. Nor am I, except by helping you, if you accept it, know what's coming. And you better believe it. I've been talking about this for years, and most people, or some people are starting to question it, but most people think he's just a hot air, talks too much, and boy, I do talk a lot. But I'm telling you right here and right now, you better get with it. You can help your family. If you don't think, well, I'm retired, I don't need to know any of this. Well, you can help guide your younger people a little bit. Because they don't get this, they don't know anything about this. They don't know what's going on. They know something's wrong. They know that things are bad. In their new world, they, like all young people, they think they're going to fix everything and make it right, like we did. Okay? Well, it's going to be different than anybody understands because of this programming that's still going on in the schools. The public schools are terrible. Now they can do some good things. They can help you get a job. They can help you be a better citizen. They can help you learn certain things, and they can get you started. But boy, you better take it on up a notch. You can't stay like it was taught in the 1800s or the early 1900s. You can't do it, or you're going to lose big time. You'll be useful a little bit as a slave, and there'll be different levels of that for a while. But gradually, something different is going to take over this world that you think you understand. Well, that's the best I can do right now. I've taken plenty of time here, and I hope you've taken it all the way through. And if you haven't, okay, I don't know what else to do. I'm going to post this morning, and I'm going to try to circulate it to anybody that'll listen or see the video. Apologize for my terrible lighting. I use just a regular microphone. I don't do anything special. I don't look very pretty. I'm old and very ill. But my process with my websites will stay. I'm teaching people how to use them, how to help other people through the websites. So I don't have any employees. I don't have any money for this. I don't do it. I pay for it all myself. And my lovely mate supports it to some degree, and she tolerates me. And believe me, she doesn't go along with all this nonsense either. So I understand it. It would be very hard. She's 81, almost to be 82, and she kind of thinks I'm just a blowhard too. But all I can do is put it out there. Hope it helps someone. What was I going to say? Oh, you could, if you would love to learn more of detail and you want to communicate with me, I'm a very much believer in the Socratic method of teaching. Okay, as I get the message out, then I want to discuss it with you. Let's talk about it. Ask questions. I'll answer your questions the best I can. I don't tell anybody what to do. I tell you what I think, and you do whatever it is you want. Okay, I don't give advice. I talk to people and I say what I think. And what I think, I do share. Okay? And if you care about that, okay, great. I'm happy about that. If you don't, I understand. It's a very difficult thing to go where I'm directing. I call it my Pathfinder project. It takes you through a series of websites and I help you create a strategic plan. I've been doing it for a long, long time. Helping people find a strategic plan with a vision, a mission, setting goals, objectives, moving through the jungle. I think of myself as a pathfinder, a guide, just like the old people that helped covered wagons, like my grandparents came west in a covered wagon, one set of them. They come west and they didn't know the pathways, they didn't know the dangers. Okay, you don't either. But you're going through something very similar to that. You're moving into a future that you don't understand. I'm trying to help you with that a bit. I've made the efforts to go that route. I think I know where I'm going and I'd like to help you. But you can go to my website, start with wrightorwrong.com, right with a W, wrightorwrong.com. And that's my landing page. Then I take you through a series depending on how far you want to go with it. I can take you pretty far, and if you keep going, I'll communicate with you through blogs and through emails, and I'll even do Zoom with you. I'll do small seminars with you, have your friends, and you want to ask questions and discuss these matters. I love to do it, but I don't teach classes. I don't want to be part of any university or public schools. I've already been there, done that. I don't have respect for that system anymore. I know they do some good things, but when you've got a president of the United States who's an absolute madman, he's a psychopathic narcissist, he's a con artist, he's a liar, he's a criminal, and you elect him as president, you know there's a problem there. And it's with the people that elected him. They were taken, they were fooled. That's what con men do. And it's no dishonor to be conned. It's just you didn't know, you believed his lies. He fooled you. He's a terrible man. He's been doing it his whole life. And it's getting worse. And if you think of him as a catalyst, he's an indicator of our times. He's an indicator of the severity of the problem. He's aggravating wars all around the world at the same time telling you how he wants peace. He's a lying piece of shit, if you'll excuse my term, my language. And he's very dangerous. Hell, I've had my life threatened, okay? I have an aortic aneurysm. It's going to kill me anyway. The doctors say that several surgeons say now I should be dead. I managed to get through the first dissection. It's going to come again. It's a balloon. It's big. But I'm not afraid of this idiot. It's a terrible thing. But the interesting thing about a psychopath is they think they're doing the right thing. He wants to be king because he thinks would be a good king. Thinks he could be a good emperor. He really intends that. And he's lying to everybody, including his spouse. Everybody. He lies to himself. That's what it means to be a psychopathic narcissist. He's not just a liar. He's a very sick, very bad man. Something needs to be done. I don't know if it's going to happen. But somebody's going to lead it anyway. The Times is pushing it that way. The international system's breaking down. It's lasted fairly well for a long time, but there have been wars going on between everybody for at least 5,000 years that I know about. And it's been the same people fighting around the Middle East, forever. And it's been the people that disagree religiously, whatever they say in Israel, it is religious what they're doing. They want to fight everybody that doesn't believe in their religion. And that's people that are generally in the Arabic world, Islam. Okay? Christians in the United States, Jews in the United States, people that think of themselves as supporting like-minded people are paying for the weaponry. Okay? It's crazy what's going on in the world. The Syrians, what we call Iranians, all the different Turkish, all that area of the world has constantly been fighting for who's going to control Jerusalem, where they think, the whole source of all the religion comes from. And it hasn't stopped. And it's not going to until this change occurs, presumably. There's still going to be people controlling the world, for as far as I can see. Okay? And I just want to wish you the best. And if you have questions, please contact me at wrightorwrong.com. So Alan Wright, hasta la vista, vaya con Dios, adios, good day, and as Merle used to say, good night and good luck.